Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cynthia Linox Show. I am your host, Cynthia Linox. Here again to remind you that this can be the best season of your life. I just started a brand new season. I just had a birthday last week. And with that, I always have like new plans, new goals, new motivation, and just looking beyond and just trying to challenge myself to bigger and better, whether it's intellectually, socially, psychologically, in all areas. I always try to strive for something better. It keeps me motivated, encouraged, inspired, and it just really keeps me busy mentally, keeps your mind stimulated. So I encourage you to do the same, because you've got to keep your coco, coco, la cabeza, your mind, you've got to keep it moving. And again, it is the best season of my life. I know that I say it's the best season because I like to think in the present. I'm very intentional, and but for you, you may be at the point where you say it can be the best season of your life. I just congratulated, a friend of mine. She also had a birthday, and I said, this is the best season of your life, so forth. And she said, if I can just get my body to line up with my mind, with my thinking. So she's on the right path because it all starts with your thinking. Um, I'm of the firm belief that your body is designed to heal itself. And if when you know that, it's almost like you channel the behavior of your cells and your organs and your tissues and all of that to line up with that thought process. But in essence, really, if you ask doctors, the body really heals itself. If you cut yourself, you'll see that it heals itself. So, anyway, whatever it is, whether it can be the best season of your life or it is the best season of your life, make sure that you are intentional, that you're living in the moment, your true, authentic self. This show is designed, the theme of this show, the message of this show, and the purpose of the show is to encourage you to go through a journey of self discovery. And when I started that whole mindset, that whole, thought, that whole message about going through a journey of self discovery, it really, all I wanted to do really was for you to go back to when you first started, when you became aware of self, so that you could get rid of all the debris and all the conditioning and all the programming that has been imposed upon you to create an identity that is in most cases, not your true identity. We take on information, we take on programming, we take on indoctrination, we take on conditioning of the mind to think a certain way. And if you go back to when you were when you arrive into this world, you will realize that you came with a blank slate. You came with a blank canvas. You had no thoughts. You had no, in terms of the things you know now. Um, and in most cases, as a child, you were happy-go-lucky. You didn't think about, when you're going to sleep. You just slept. Wherever you are, you just slept. You didn't think about whether or not you were going to eat. Wherever you were, you just ate. Well, you knew that you were going to be fed, and if you weren't fed on time, you expressed it through tears and crying and so forth. So it was an easy life. And as we grew, we start taking on all this kind of information that starts shaping us. And now in our adult life, sometimes we realize we don't even know who we are, and that's just not good, because if you don't know who you are, you don't know how to function. You don't know how to really act. You don't have the boldness and the strength and the confidence to be your authentic self, despite criticism and judgment from other people, because the tendency that we have is always to please others. Now, most of you have shared, or all of you, I should say, have shared that your biggest hindrance, your biggest issue with this journey of self discovery is getting rid of religious indoctrination. And I went through that, but to me, it wasn't too much of a big deal because, first of all, I went through it alone. So I had a lot of experience of what worked for me. And some of the situations that I had externally, things like, um, you know, uh, relationships that no longer worked simply because, and I know for a fact when you are in a religious mindset, you don't really have the you don't really have the incentive, the desire to fellowship with people that don't think and believe like you. I was that way, and so I understand other people that may have the same sentiments, which is fine. But so you are going through that. But do you know that and what you have said, it's that it's more difficult to get rid of to unlearn the things that's been inculcated into you, that's been drilled into your psyche, into your, that's formed a belief system, which in essence is what makes you who you are. But my friend, I'm going to tell you, you're going to have to do it. You are going to have to do it because that's the only way that you're going to peel off layer by layer by layer. You're going to peel off the old to see what's there, to come to your true, authentic self. And one of the things that I did, I made a parallel last week about the story of the Garden of Eden in the Bible in Genesis, and I said how God placed Adam and Eve in the Bible. God placed Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden and gave them instructions, or gave Adam instructions not to eat from a certain fruit, because the day you eat of that, you will surely die. You will come into the knowledge of good and evil, and you will surely die. They ate it, and God kicked them out. We were talking about the morality of God as a father, as we have been taught, and I know that I did say that he's either he doesn't care, or the writers of the Bible, because the Bible was created by man, man's opinion, man's thought, man's view, and either that was the way they designed the story, or God doesn't exist. So it's one of the three, and you have to make a decision as to what works for you, where you know your strength is, where your belief system lies. But going back, we're talking about God's morality, and so He kicks them out. They ate of the fruit from that particular tree that He told them not to, and He kicks them out. And so for me, when I started reading that, because I had to go back and read it. Before, when I was religious, I read the Bible with a total bias mindset and did not question anything. Now I question everything. And that's why I came up with questioning the morality of God, because so I went back in order to um, parallel it with my life. And I didn't go back to this specific experience. It just came to me. When you have a desire, your intuition kind of collaborates with your thinking and so forth, and then it comes to you. And I share that growing up, we were sent to boarding school. And I was expelled 3 times. And so now that I go back and I wonder what was happening to me, and I did share that it was because of mischief. Many of you may have been wondering, what kind of mischief were you? Well, it was a religious school and boarding school, and they didn't serve meat. They didn't serve meat. They didn't eat meat, and 3 of us, the younger ones, in the dorm. We went out and we got a chicken, and we tried to cook the chicken, and it was just a mess because, first of all, we trespassed into an area that we didn't belong, and it just created a whole mess, with noise and things and whatever. Anyway, so they expelled me and the other two as well. That was one of the mischief that you did, but I guess I was just crying out for attention or whatever. And then another thing that I did one time, once a month, or was it twice a month? We were you could go into the city of that community and shop and just do whatever. It was just like an outing. And what we would do, we would disappear from the guide, disappear, and that would create a big problem because if he or she took out 10 students, you had to come back with 10, with the 10 that you took out. And so we would go hide, and it would just create chaos. And not only that, it would delay the return time, and then the meals prepared in the dining room, and it was just mischief. And so I go back anyway. So the third time they expelled me, my parents, they went through this whole thing uh, to find out what was wrong with me. And the more I think of that, what what comes to my mind is that they thought that I was worthy, that it was worth um, that it was worth the effort to find out what was wrong with me. Because, in that society at that time, you send your kids away to school, they come back home mid-year, didn't make any sense. And then, the fact that they would take me to, mental professionals, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, that was kind of hush hush because that would imply that, she's a little cray cray. And that there's a certain element of embarrassment with that. So, um, but my parents, my mom, my dad, they thought that I was worth the effort. They even took me to a place where they gave me a bath. It was like one of those Zen stuff, those Zen thing, and they gave me a bath, to dispel the evil spirits or anything that would have come upon me. And I didn't know anything of that. I was just there. But I was happy when I came home. And then they made another investment by getting me a tutor because they were going to register me in the local schools, which is something that that's not what he had in mind. But anyway, so they registered me, they got me a tutor, and then I got into school and so forth. And, I became an honor student and so forth. But they thought it was worth all that effort. For them, it wasn't like just kick her out. Now, I'm going to say to you, go back to your childhood. And yeah, you can cherry pick. You can cherry pick and find something that you can make reference to and you can parallel. Now, remember, the story of the Bible, that is a story that's established, that's in there. And if you are getting your doctrine from the Bible, then you can parallel it to your life. What is it in your life that you can extract value, worth, something that your parents may have done? It could be even a discipline, form of discipline. Um, you just have to figure out the motivation. How did they treat you after? I shared before, like my dad has never told me, I love you, Cindy. I've never heard that from my dad. But because of the things he did, he showed his love by his actions. You may have had the same experience. Go back to that place when you were young, when you were uh, a kid, a child, as far back as you can remember. And you will, once you purpose in your mind to do that, you will be able to go back. I go back and I think of, me asking my dad for a bike. I remember that. And he got me a bike. I go back and I remember when my dad took me to the store and I wanted this dress and it was very expensive at the time. And he said, "Don't look at the tag. If you want it, you get it." My dad was in a position where he could. and he said, "You deserve it." Again, affirming me. So I go back to that affirmation. I go back to that self-worth where they thought I was worth all the effort of taking me to a mental professional to find out if something was wrong with me because I kept getting expelled from school. But then once they put me in the local school, I was fine. I became an honor student, and a leader in school. So there was nothing wrong. There was nothing psychologically wrong with me, but that told me when I go back now in this journey, when I went back, it tells me that they saw worth in me. They didn't just kick me out. You have to understand the whole psychology. And, in my community, at that time, you send your kids, they're supposed to come back with some kind of diploma or some kind of, graduated from something. But I was kicked out 3 times. And through that experience, I was able to mesh that and to come to the understanding that my parents saw the value, my worth. She is worth saving. So we're going to do all this to find out what is wrong with her, and we're going to fix it. They showed me, now that I go back and think, that I was worth it. Can you imagine how that makes me feel? I encourage you to do the same as you were growing up with your, perhaps brothers and sisters. What was that experience? Try to extract value from that. Value, a better understanding. When was that time for you that you felt worthy? That you felt validated. In school, once I went to school locally, and I was on the honor roll and so forth, and then they selected me to be a leader in the school, and then they put a little badge on your arm which would designate that you're one of the leaders in the school, and if anybody had any issues, they would come to you to resolve situation, any conflict or whatever. You were the one, conflict resolution and so forth. So they named me a leader. What did they see in me? What was the value they saw in me? That was so affirming. And as I go back, I see that. What is it about you? How were you, whether it was school or Girl Scout or whatever organization, or just simply family reunions? What is it? What do you see? What do you remember? How do you see yourself? What affirmation did you get at that time? Now we may say, or I have said, I don't need affirmation. And, affirmation is good because people share with you what they see of you. Just like sometimes I would see something in someone and I would say, "You have got this," or "You are such, a bright person," or "You are so skilled or talented," or "Your expertise is beyond comparison, unmatched," or whatever. I do that a lot. When I see something positive in someone, I like to share it because sometimes they don't see themselves that way. And most people, they kind of deflect. They don't want praises, they don't want accolades, they don't want any of that. And when you have put in the work, I encourage you to take it as an affirming gesture. But I'm telling you, go back and try to figure out, what is it? What are those little things? What is it at one point that made you feel validated, that made you feel affirmed, that spoke to you and said to you that this person knew and acknowledged your worth, your value as a person? And you start digging and you start digging. You have to go back. You have to literally make a mental journey to go back to discover who you are. Who is that person? Why were you so happy and vivacious? What made you smile? What made you laugh? I used to laugh a lot. They used to call me happy go lucky. Like I don't have a care in the world. As a matter of fact, my husband sometimes, if we're in the middle of a situation and we have to make decisions, and I just handle it light. He says, you're so happy go lucky. Well, yeah. I mean, unless it's a situation of life and death, then but you still have to make decisions and you have to deal with situations. But just think of when you were little, the things that made you laugh, the things that you loved to do, the things that brought you joy and pleasure. Go back to that place. And that's how I grew up. My parents constantly validating me, and I don't even know that they did that consciously or intentionally. That's just what they did. As I said, my dad never said, I love you, but if I say, Dad, can we have hamburgers tonight? So he would get us in the car, and I'll put on my shorts, and we would drive to a distance at this commissary, and he would get us hamburgers. That was fun. My dad aimed to please. My dad, he was very strict, but he was a good provider. He wanted to provide a life that would make us happy, balanced, and happy, and give us the things that we wanted. That was just him. So I encourage you to go back and think, go back and revisit those moments. Go back and revisit those moments where you were at your happiest. Perhaps it was from grammar school to junior high, or from junior high to high school, or perhaps from, when you realized you were graduating from high school, and you went on to college and trying to decide what you were um, going to study, and all of that. Go back to those beautiful moments. Go back to the time you fell in love. Even if you're not married to the person with whom you fell in love the first time, but still remember those feelings. Remember those feelings. And as I grew, and and became an adult and so forth, I had all of that. As I shared earlier, I did not grow up religious, so I didn't have any kind of religious baggage at all. I was happy. I was content, full of joy, and living a great life. And then I had a situation when I lived in New York, and I was at a very vulnerable moment in my life, and then I met this person, and they uh, shared the gospel, and I got born again. And imagine, here I am feeling so or having all these thoughts about myself, being validated, knowing my worth, my value, and getting to know who I am, and I just knew that I was worthy, that I was deserving, because my dad, when we went to the store, and he, the dress that I wanted, he said, you deserve it. And so I knew that I was deserving. So I felt deserving, I felt validated, I felt affirmed, worthy, and of value, that I would bring value. When I was in school, and they selected me to be a leader in the school, they knew that I had value to bring to the organization, to the school, to the student body. They decided that. They decided that. They decided that. So I went back and I start looking at all of that. And then Then I start to think, when I got born again, I come into uh, this whole sphere of indoctrination, religious indoctrination. And then, uh, I got a whole different message. I got a whole different message. And the message was, you're bad. You were born a sinner. You're like, you're anything good that you do is like filthy rags. You are not worthy and you're wretched. Think of that contrast. And you know what? Because I accepted the whole concept of being born again, I accepted those things. I thought I was a sinner. I didn't, back then, even though I grew up Catholic, and well, when I say Catholic, we went to Catholic school because it was the only, private school available. Um, but even then, I wasn't, I wasn't sin conscious. I never thought that I was born a sinner, that I was wretched, that I was bad. I didn't think any of that. But then I come into this religious sphere, and that's what I'm told. Imagine. And I lived that way for the longest time. And then you live your life seeking validation, seeking approval from God. You live your life, or I live my life, scared, afraid of judgment and punishment. And then there was a whole concept of heaven and hell. Heaven is reward, hell is punishment. I believed all that. So when I started this journey, when I, went back and went back to the happy days of my life, and when I was born and at home, and even though I messed up by getting expelled from school, that my parents saw the worth and the value of me to fix the situation that they thought I had. But then I come and I'm told that, I am bad. Imagine that, thinking that you were bad. And this is, I was an adult when this happened. I was already an adult. Imagine you taking your baby. Imagine you taking your baby. You're born, the baby is born, the baby is months old, and they grow to, you take your baby to church, you put them in the nursery, and they're taught about, God and so forth. And then when they reach a certain age, by then it's seared in their mind that they are a sinner needing to be saved, or else. Imagine, I know a lot of families today. One particular family I'm thinking of, they have told their kids nothing about religion. They left church a while back, and they were in church, I mean, like, really immersed in church doctrine, and they left a while back. And now their kids know nothing about anything. They nothing religious at all, and they're so balanced and stable, and they're kind, they're generous, they are uh, peace loving, and they share, and they have good manners. And so the morals, you may say, well, where do you get your morals if you don't, if you're not connected to religion? Well, first of all, understand this. When you talk about God, there are different gods. There's a whole bunch of gods. And if you were born in the Middle East, your God would be Allah. If you were born in India, that would be someone else. If you were born, and you're born in America, your God is Yahweh. So, and everyone thinks their God is it. So you can choose whichever God works for you, and leave the other folks to do whatever they want. But when you talk about morals, and last week I talked about the character of God is immoral. And that's because the way the scholars wrote, the Bible folks, the theologians, scholars, you know, um, that's the way they wrote the story of God. And so when I questioned, I said, well, there's so many things that God allowed, and if God is all present, He's all knowing and all powerful, but He allowed that. And then, as I was digging, I tried to find stories that would be uplifting and to tell me that I'm good, that I'm on the right path, that God is pleased with me, and all has to do with a little bit of threat, because what God demands is obedience. Obedience is what God demands. God demands obedience. And sometimes we miss the mark. Why? Because we have this earthly body that's weak. And then I came across this story. And you have to look, because when you parallel it with your life or the things you see today, it'll make sense. So when you talk about morality, or where do I get my morals from, there's this guy, he's a Levite, and he's in this city. And there's this, I think it was in a foreign land. There are these men that came to his house to have sex with him, to have sex with him. I don't know. They could be 10, 20 men. I don't know. The point is, they all came and they wanted to have sex with him. And in order to avert that, he offers his concubine. He said, here, why don't you use her instead? Why don't you all have sex with her instead? And he gives them the concubine. The concubine is like a mistress, the side chick. Imagine that. So all of that was allowed. So they all had sex with her. They all raped her. They all, if there were 10 men or 20 men, they all raped her that moment, that day, in that place. And she died. And then they flung her body by the doorstep of the Levite. He comes out, he sees her, she's dead. She's dead after being abused by all the men that were there. She died. It's kind of a gory story, but I came upon it. And he opens the door. He sees her at the doorstep, and then he for some reason, again. And the reason I share this is to encourage you. If you have any questions, go and look it up, because it is incumbent upon you to do your own search, to look things up and to know for yourself. And I am just here making an analogy here and just trying to figure out, when somebody says, well, where do you get your morality? I mean, the morality, from my own intuition, do no harm to another. Do no harm to another. And I live by that. So he takes the woman, the concubine, she's dead, remember, and he cuts her in 12, he dismembered her 12 parts and sent each part to the different tribes of Israel. It's a gory story, but it's immoral. So when you look at that, this is all. I share this so that it can help you deconstruct. When you read that and you apply critical thinking skills, you reason and you apply logic, that should help you. That should help you. Well, wait a minute. What was this in the Bible? How comes I now I've read this story many times before, but I just, again, with a biased mind. God is God. He can do whatever, and he can allow whatever, he can permit whatever. And so either he's not all powerful or everywhere, or he doesn't know everything. But if he does, then whose morality makes better sense? And all of that, as I, even now, it encourages me. It just really, not only does it encourages me, but it affirms the decision that I made to uh, guide and govern my life a certain way. And I encourage you to do the same. If you are stuck on religious doctrine and you compare it to your own life, to the things you want, many of you are, you are a good person. You're not wretched. You're not bad. What makes you bad? What's bad? What's bad? People say, oh, my bad. I don't say that. You will never hear me say that. You will never hear me say, oh, my bad. And I know it's just an expression. I just don't. I just don't. Because I'm not bad. Ever. I may make a mistake, but I'm not bad. You're not bad. You're not a sinner. Who decides that? That you're a sinner? And again, it's religious doctrine. And people will try to, use the Bible to really weaponize you. Today, you can't, you do something, you feel guilty, you feel judged, you feel criticized, and then you go to church, you go back, you go to the altar, you repent, you come back the next week, you have a girlfriend, you sleep together. And as a matter of fact, let me tell you something. Dolly, this, and I'm sharing it because she shared it publicly. And she's on one of these apps, one of these dating apps, and she dates, and she's trying to find a, she's divorced and so forth. And she said that she met this guy, and they hit it off. It was great. They had like 2 or 3 months riding back and forth and so forth. And so he was going to be in the city, this particular day, after corresponding with him for a couple of months or so. And so he was going to be in the city, and asked her if she would like to spend the weekend with him. So she said she was up to it. She's a mature adult, and she was up to it, and there was an attraction and so forth. So they rented he rented a hotel, and he picked her up, and they went to the cabin or whatever, the hotel, and spent the weekend. And the first night they were together, and of course they were intimate, and they were talking and so forth, and he mentioned to her that he was a minister, a minister. And so she didn't think anything of it, and after they were intimate, he got by the bed, right by the bed, and he started to pray. He started to pray, to ask God for forgiveness. But they had already enjoyed a great episode of sex, of intimacy. And she was fine, and she was, she said she was shocked. She was like, what the hell is this? He was at the bedside, knelt down, and he was praying, asking God for forgiveness. And they spent a weekend. This is a well, when I say it's a true story, it's a true story that I heard. But I don't believe she's going to make it up, because she's just very authentic and transparent. And, she doesn't care about, but yeah, and they spent a whole weekend. And it's not just that first night that they were intimate the whole weekend. And then he proceeded to tell her that, he was a minister, and, about his church and this and that and whatever. And so, in her mind, she was like, well, what the hell are you doing on a dating app? I don't know if he was married or not. I don't know that part, but she was wondering, what is he doing on a dating app? So she's assuming that he was single and available. And when he said, I'm coming to town, he wanted, someone, the connection, to be out of town, where, no one knew him or whatever. And they went to another city, in a cabin. And she said it was nice. She said it was a great time. But the thing is this, I mean, it's not a matter of good, bad, right, or wrong. Again, I don't know if he was married or not, that's irrelevant. The point is they were intimate, and with that came guilt. For the minister, he felt guilty. Now, if you're on the up and up and you're single and you are a person, a man, a woman, let's get real. We are real human beings with human feelings and desires and I wouldn't even say temptations, because our bodies just leads us. And our bodies are created in that way for pleasure, for sex, for we're the one have to that have to have our own moral compass. And neither you or me are qualified to criticize or to judge someone else. You do your own thing and I'll do my own thing. And that's how I function. When I was single, I did my own thing. I didn't ask permission or needed validation from anyone. I'm just saying, I'm just making reference to that because, he was attracted to her, and they went to a place, and after he, had intimate relationship with her, then he gets on his knees and pray. What do you see? The that is so incongruous. That makes no sense at all. That sense of guilt. Do you go through that? There's another girl. She's got a whole thing on social media. It's called the ex Christian girl, and she shared. She said, well, she's done with it. She is. I don't even. I guess she's deconstructing, but she doesn't sound that way. She's just done. She just says, I'm done. But she shared that at church, she would be at church, and she had her boyfriend who was not churched, and she would leave church and go home and, make sure she fixed him a meal, and they would have a good time. And, he stayed at her house and so forth, and all that. So it was like she was living a double life. That is not only madness, but that is so stressful. That is so stressful. That will stress you out, my friend. So you need to cleanse your mind. Now, was that bad? Who's to say it's bad? If she had a boyfriend at her house and they, have sex, that's just natural. What's not good is you sitting in church pretending to be someone you're not. And then you have this guilt hanging over your head. You're bad, you're bad, you're wretched, you're wretched, you're sinner, you're bad, you're bad. That's not a life. You won't be able to live and to enjoy life. Why? Because you're afraid of judgment, punishment. And if someone sees you, oh my gosh, you have to reach a place where you don't care. It doesn't matter what they think. It doesn't matter what they say. It does not matter. That's the place you need to get to, where it doesn't matter what people say or what people think. You have to have your own conviction, and that comes from your own moral compass, the thing that guides you. And once you remove from your thinking that it's not bad, you're not bad, you're not you're not wretched, you're not wretched, you're not a sinner. What makes us think that you're bad, that you're a sinner, that you're wretched? All of that is religious indoctrination. And every religion have their own thing of that, of these laws and guidelines and rules and doctrines set up that you must follow. How can you live like that? How can you live with that type of stress trying to please God? Again, I am not, you can choose whichever God you want because there are many gods, and I don't subscribe to any of them. I live my life a certain way that works for me. Whether there's God or not, that I'm not even thinking about that. But if that, like somebody said to me this week, I don't want to do anything with church or religion, but I have my belief in God and Jesus, and that is fine if that works for you. But if you're going to live a life based on uh, punishment or reward, then it is still limiting your ability to be free, to live an authentic life. To be free to live your life unapologetically authentic. It's got to stop, my friend. It's the madness. And I listen to a lot of podcasts, and we know that the religious community is going through a change right now, and it is so prevalent that today I know, like a lot, when there are panels on these podcasts and things like that, people they're afraid to say whether or not they're Christians, because Christianity has a totally different meaning today. Has a totally different meaning today when you say you're Christian. It's not like before you could say, well, yeah, you're a God fearing Christian or whatever. No, it's tagged with uh, doing bad things, terrorism, and things like that. It's tagged with harming other people, and well, that's neither here nor there. The point is, you need to know where you stand. You need to know what is your identity. And at this point in your life, if you don't do it now, you will go through the rest of your life living that stress of not knowing who you are, or living the identity that was imposed upon you. As you know, for those of you that grew up in church, and I know that to me is the worst, because that's all you know. That is all you know. You were raised in church, and when you reach a certain age, you were told that you were a sinner, and you had to you had to get born again, and otherwise you're going to hell. That's kind of tough, because you and you don't even know. You only know, as a matter of fact, most people that are in a religious circle, all you know is what is preached from the pulpit. This morning, my husband got some kind of documentary that was, popped up on his social media, and it had to do with churches and tithes, and how the money is misused, and how you're led to believe that you're tithing onto the Lord, and most of the church members, they have needs. They need to pay their rent, their light bill, their water bill, buy school supplies for the kids, and all sort of stuff. And you are admonished to pray. You are admonished to pray and ask God for a blessing, but in the meantime, you are giving 10% of your income to the pastors. And let me tell you something, that money goes to the pastors. It goes to the pastors and to take care of the staff that they have. If you have a full-time worship leader, they are paid, and they're paid well. I know, because I used to work for a ministry. I used to work for a ministry back in my days, and they used to pay me a decent salary. They paid me a decent salary. I mean, at that time, I didn't, that it is, it was what it was, And I remember one time they had a some kind of a banquet, and it was like Christmas celebration and so forth, and they gave me an envelope, and it had $1,000. So they were pretty generous. But that money, and of course, all the pastors, look at the pastors, they all live well. They live well. And I'm not saying there's something wrong with that. Now, if you work If you work in whatever industry you work, the labor of your hand, your skills, your talents, your expertise, and you make money, then you could have a $1 trillion house, and that's fine. But when you're taking from the church now, and I'm telling you, this is confession for me. I never used to think that, because one, I was, we were like the leaders of King's Ministry, and they would have meetings. We would have a conference, and I would speak, and I would take up an offering, and I was good at it. I was good at it. Of course, it wasn't for me; it was for the church. But all of that goes to the past. That's why all the pastors, they live well. In most cases, at least here in America, they, if you overall, most of the pastors now, if you somebody said the other day, they said, take away tithes and offering from church circle, and see how many pastors will stay with the task, would stay with the idea that I am called of God. Take away, stop taking up offerings, stop taking up tithes, and see if they stay and continue to preach and they trust God, then keep the church open, because they have enough faith. They're telling you, because I know they did this at my church. You must trust God. You must trust God, and you must pray and all that for God to meet your needs. Well, if you're called by God to run a church, to open a church and to run a church, then you pray so that every month God will meet the need for the mortgage, or if you own the building, to pay the utilities and so forth. And it's true, because there was this guy that came in from another country, and he had some money with him, and he was asking around. He wanted to invest in a business. He wanted to invest in a business, so he was a businessman, so he could get a return. And you know what he was advised? They said, start a church. True story. Start a church. You want an investment on your money? How much money do you have to invest? $50,000? Start a church. Start a church. And you will see a great return on your money. So, when I think of all these things, and now that I hear you that are having such a problem, or such a challenge, actually, because it's a challenge, because it's not a problem, because if it's a problem, it can be resolved. But it's a challenge simply because the indoctrination is so deep into your mind that it's hard to remove the indoctrination. It's hard to remove. It's difficult. It's a challenge to remove, because every time you're about to do something, every time you may be, having the tendency to have a glass of wine, you start thinking, is this good or bad? Is this good or bad? Am I going to offend God? Is this good or bad? And you can't enjoy life. The beat is playing, and you just want to dance and just rock it a little bit, and you're wondering, is this good? Is this acceptable? Is this how? That is too much stress, my friend. That is a lot of stress that you don't need. But it's up to you. It is up to you. You can change that. You've got to change it. Otherwise, you're not living. You're not living. This new generation, Gen Z, they are they're in a totally different mindset. They're in a totally different mindset. And I hear from them. They're like, no, no, I'm good. I'm good. It's like, I don't want that. I don't need that stress. I am good. And if it works for you, then you're good. I'm just talking to those that are going through this thing, this challenge, wanting to know who they are and how do I discover that? How do I come into my place of joy, of contentment, of peace, of freedom, so that I can live my best life now? One lady said to me last week, she said, "Well, I am not of this world. I am not of this world. This is not my home." She has hopes for another life, afterlife. That is her belief. So she's just settled right here. She's doing nothing outside of religion. For her, pleasure, fun, joy, that is not for her to enjoy here. She made that clear. And I respect that because at least she knows, whether she's indoctrinated or not, at least she knows what she wants. And somebody like that, you have to respect them. I do. We don't have anything in common because I think totally different. The purpose of life, I've said this before, the purpose of life is pleasure. And that's the way I think. That's what I know. That's how I live. Pleasure. When stuff happens, you just deal with it. But the purpose of life is pleasure. So you have to decide what's going to work for you. But just know that you have got what it takes to turn your life around, your mindset, because all of it has to do with your mind, your thinking, your mindset. What are the thoughts that are set in your mind? And you have the ability to change it. You're doing it right now. Just the fact that you are asking, that you're seeking, that you're knocking, you want to know, how do I change this? Just the fact that you are seeking. And one day you're going to, as you continue to look and to seek and all the things that right now, like all the the barbaric stories that are in the Bible, as they come to you and you realize how it affects your mind, your thinking, and you're thinking that God could do this and God did, because anytime somebody says something like on social media, like when there's a live podcast or something, and someone would say something like God is going to get you. Why? Because it's fear. It's fear. They're motivated by fear, and they try to uh, scare you. But after a while you reach a point, once you know the truth, that's the truth that's going to set you free. But then again, it is not my truth, it is your truth. And that's the truth that lies within. As you continue to seek, to search, to knock, to dig within, as you continue to go within, that truth will reveal yourself. And that is the truth, your truth, that's going to set you free, my friend. And with that, I'm going to leave you with that. Go back to that place. Make yourself go back to that place and extrapolate, just get it. Extract the good times, experiences that you have had. And all of that will help you in your journey at this time. In the meantime, every Thursday, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, you'll see me here. And if you can't meet our date 24/7, you can check it out on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and watch the show. If you need to drop me a note, go to info at thecynthialinoxshow.com. Drop me a note and I will respond to you. And besides, if you would like to have a 30-minute complimentary session, I'm a transformational life coach, a certified transformational life coach. You are welcome to drop me a note. We'll set up a time. And if you need someone to walk along with you in this journey, I'm your girl. I'm your person. In the meantime, I'm going to say ta-ta, au revoir. Have a fantastic weekend. Of course, there's always Friday. That's before you come out. And I